Hey everyone, it's Anime Reaper coming at you with another What If Naruto Found Out About Uzumaki Clan at a Young Age, Part 10. This fanfiction was written by Dreener. I'm sorry it took so long to come out with another video. I was having computer troubles, but it's fixed now, so if you like this what if and want more like it, please like and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to check the description and leave a comment down below. Without further ado, let's get started. Chapter 20, A Song for Tragedy. Naruto, 1 year later. A loud sound was heard throughout the forest. A crater big enough to fill 3 people was in the middle of the forest, and in the middle was the form of one Uzumaki Naruto. His red hair was shining like a ruby from the light of the sun, his left hand still leaking a bit of chakra. His blue eyes looked around the crater, a small smile spread across his face, his fists were getting stronger. Naruto wore his katana tightened to his belt. He stood 134 centimeters tall, wearing a black and red jacket with thin red lines across. The lines gathered in his belly to form a red spiral. Bandages covering his legs, blue shinobi sandals. Beneath the jacket, he wore a thin white shirt with the Uzumaki symbol in the front. His hair reached his shoulders. Toadjiji had cut his hair when it started growing to his hips. A paper seal on his right shoulder to use, on his arms. Weight seals were 150 pounds in both of his arms, and 170 pounds on his legs. His body had grown slightly muscular, and his face looked sharper. Jumping from the crater, he made his way back to his house. Not much had changed for 1 year. He had completed the first and second training needed for chakra manipulation for all his affinities. For the final training for water affinity, he needed to pull water from the air around. So far, only the second Hokage and a few others were known to complete the last part. He had achieved to gather some water, but not as much as he wanted. Naruto had asked Toadjiji about his connection with the Senju clan, since he could use wood style like the first and water like the second Hokage was. But Toadjiji had no answers on how was that possible, and Naruto couldn't detect lies, so he had dropped the discussion. He needed to create a fire on his hands and stand for 10 minutes to complete fire affinity. Naruto had reached 4 minutes but was still not done yet. Kurama helped him with that particular part, using his chakra. He found it easier to use fire affinity. For earth, he needed to make his skin hard as stone. To use in battles as an enhanced fist or to protect against different attacks. Naruto still hasn't started this one. He wanted to be done with fire and water first. For wind, he needed to separate the flow of the waterfall with wind chakra only. Jiraiya-sensei told him he needed to find a natural waterfall somewhere, since the water in Mount Myaboka was slightly different. When it came to Fuinjutsu, he had reached level V, and to pass this one, he needed to create a sealed barrier to protect, a void seal barrier, and chakra detection seal. One that caught Naruto's eyes about Fuinjutsu was level X. He needed to create an empty space seal. For this one, Toadjiji told him he couldn't help him like with the others. This one was beyond his knowledge. Naruto didn't know what the seal was supposed to do, but he was sure it was useful or extremely dangerous. But level X raised a problem for Naruto. It was the last level in books written if he wanted to reach even further beyond. He needed books and scrolls from Uzumaki, and all that was sealed away within the village. Both Toadjiji and Fukazaka-sama told him that few people that had tried to enter the sealed part of Uzumaki had never returned. For this reason, Naruto had decided to first complete level X and then go to Uzumaki, since he didn't know what exactly he needed to do to open the seal. Naruto used his clones every day to learn Fuinjutsu and everything he needed. With his clones, he was able to complete chakra manipulation much faster. Toadjiji had praised them and even had bought ramen and a few other foods for him to celebrate. As Naruto walked through the forest, he couldn't help but smile as a bird landed on his shoulder and sang. He loved calm moments like this one, only him and nature, and of course, a giant furball on his seal. Kurama growled at Naruto's thought but decided to ignore it, since it was indeed relaxing, and went back to sleep. When it came to his wood style, he had no scrolls to help but could advance on his own. Jiraiya-sensei told him that if he could, he would bring him scrolls from the Senju compound, but Tsunade Senju hasn't been in the village for 7 years now. Naruto now could use 2 new Mokuton jutsus. Wood style, deep forest. The jutsu grew as many trees as the user could by using vast amounts of chakra. The trees could change the landscape and attack the enemy, since the trees had sharp ends and could be used to bind someone. Wood style, wood clone. Naruto used this jutsu with how Shadow Clone worked, but wood clones were different from normal Shadow Clones. They were much more durable but needed much more chakra than Shadow Clones, but what they could do, according to Kurama, was that with enough training, he could use his chakra cloak in a clone but only one. Naruto had learned a few new jutsus in his other affinities. Fire Style, Flaming Palm Technique. This jutsu allows the user to hold the make spark in their hand. They then amplify it with their chakra until it is a small flame. By mimicking the gentle fist style, they push the flame into their opponent, causing clothes to light or minor burns on the body. Water Release, Evil Windmill Water Shuriken. The user creates one or more large Fuma shurikens made of water and launches it towards the enemy. The shuriken causes massive damage when hitting an enemy. It is also much more solid than the usual water shurikens and can easily parry other kunous and shurikens that come in its path. Wind Release, Pressure Damage. It creates a small tornado that sucks everything around. The enemy sucked can be caused severe cuts around the body and even death if used with more chakra. Naruto heard from Fukazaka that his godfather was looking for Tsunade. Naruto hoped to meet her soon. He knew she was his godmother and wondered how she was, but at the same time wondered why would she leave him alone amongst the wolves. Alone in a village full of hatred. Naruto suddenly felt another bird landing on his head. Naruto slowly pulled a finger close to his head. The bird flew to his finger and looked at Naruto. He smiled brightly and decided to reach his house. While walking, Naruto turned to his right to see Gamekaki looking at him. "Gamekaki, how are you doing?" Naruto asked, smiling, looking down at the small toad. He kneeled. "Good Naru-kun, hoping we could play again," Gamekaki suggested. Naruto nodded his head since he was sure he could spend some time with the little toad. As he was following Gamekaki, Naruto thought about the Phoenix contract. He wondered what would happen if he made a contract with both Toad and Phoenix. He knew there was a high chance that he would never find the contract, but if he did, he hoped to use it. Naruto sighed heavily and decided to put that thought at the back of his head. Later, Naruto soon reached the house, and to his surprise, Ma and Fukazaka were waiting in front of his door. "Fukazaka-sama, is everything alright?" Naruto asked worriedly. "Everything is alright, Naruto-kun, but Jiraiya boy will soon arrive. He said he had something important," Fukazaka stated. Naruto raised an eyebrow but decided to just wait for him inside. He opened a bowl with ramen from a store that Toadjiji had brought him. While eating, he also ate a few fruits like carrots, tomatoes which Naruto didn't like much, and kale. Both Jiraiya and Fukazaka had told him to eat healthy foods. After eating, he suddenly felt Toadjiji just behind his door. He turned his head in time for the door to open. Walking inside was Toadjiji smiling. "Naruto, is good to see you, my boy," Jiraiya greeted him. Naruto hugged him, and the old Toadjiji hugged him back. Jiraiya looked at him proudly. Naruto reminded him so much of both Minato and Kushina. "I'm fine, sensei," he replied. "Very well, Naruto, there has been a small change of plans," Toadjiji stated, and Naruto frowned, thinking it was the time for him to return to the village. Jiraiya noticed Naruto's face and immediately raised his hands. "No, is not what you think. The 9 months we will spend in roaming around the elemental nations," his Toadjiji stated smiling, and Naruto jumped on his feet with his fists in the air. "Yaeda," he shouted and looked back at him. "Where are we going?" Naruto asked but suddenly remembered that he would have to leave Mount Myaboku. He slightly lowered his gaze and head. Jiraiya noticed it and put a hand on his shoulder for support. Naruto looked up at him. "Don't worry, Naruto, you will meet them whenever you need their help," Jiraiya said, reassuring him. After a few moments, Naruto nodded his head. "Now first we will go to Taki. There are many waterfalls there for you to complete your wind manipulation," Jiraiya stated. Still, at the same time, he didn't tell him that the Nanobijin hierarchy was there and hoped that meeting someone like himself would lift his spirit even more. And possibly have a female friend. "All right," Naruto said, agreeing with the plan, and followed him outside. Walking outside, Naruto's eyes widened to see Fukazaku, Ma, Gamapunta, the boss of the Toads, and Gamekaki. Walking outside, he saw Fukazaku handing him a large scroll. Naruto grabbed it and opened it to see that it was the Toad summoning contract. He looked at Jiraiya-sensei, who nodded his head at him. He smiled, and Naruto bit his finger enough to draw blood and slowly wrote his name in the contract. "You are now officially a member of ours," Fukazaku-sama stated proudly. Even Kurama was fully awake and was listening with a grin on his face. "Thank you, Fyokazaku-sama," Naruto said, smiling gratefully that he had their support and trust. "I hope to see you again soon," Ma said, and so did Gamabuntat and Gamakaki. Jiraiya waved at him, and he stood close to him. Togeji made a few hand signs and slammed his wide-open hand in the ground, and everything went white. Naruto suddenly was somewhere else. The first thing he noticed was that he stood in a forest somewhere. Close to him was Togeji slowly standing on his feet. Naruto turned to him and waited for him to say what they would do next. "Now, you will follow me, Naruto," the old Sannin stated. Naruto just nodded his head and followed him, wanting to see more of the world. He had enjoyed his time in Mount Myaboku, but he missed talking to someone else except his sensei and toads. "Okay Naruto, while we are walking I have a new chakra control exercise for you," the white-haired man spoke, taking out a black metal ball the size of his fist and chucking it to Naruto, who caught it. "Wow, this thing is heavy, Togeji, what am I supposed to do with it?" Naruto asked curiously as to what his new exercise would be. He knew this wasn't needed for his elemental manipulation. "I want you to explode this balloon filled with water using your chakra only," Jiraiya said, and Naruto got to work, but the task was proving difficult. "So in how many places you have been, Togeji?" Naruto asked, detaching his canteen from his utility belt and taking a sip of refreshing water. They had been traveling for 2 days now, journeying from town to town, city to city. "In many places, Naruto. I have been in Kumagakure. The village is more like living in clouds, but still very beautiful. Have been in Kiri, not really my cup of tea. And have been in Suna a few times, even with your father," Togeji replied smiling, remembering the old times of him with Minato. Naruto was surprised to hear that. "Really? Why were you there?" Naruto asked, since he knew that Suna was an ally of Konoha, and they weren't probably there because of war. "When Minato became Hokage, he went to the village a few times. I tagged along," Jiraiya answered, and Naruto felt and noticed the melancholy in his voice. Almost like opening a closed wound. "What about IWA?" Naruto asked, since IWA and Konoha were like oil and water, just can't combine them. "No, the last time I was in IWA territory was during the war, not for fun," the old Sannin replied and kept walking towards Taki. "What kind of chakra control exercise is this anyway? I've been trying for days but the damn thing won't pop. Can't I just use clones to do it for me? It sure as hell cut down the time process." "No," Jiraiya replied sternly, as he had done so many times before when posed with the question. "Now get cracking, we still got a long way ahead of us. You know, this isn't like anything I expected when you told me you were going to be teaching me a new jutsu," Naruto complained as he channeled his chakra into the water balloon, willing it to burst. It was much harder than it sounded, popping a water balloon with chakra, and though Jiraiya had yet to tell him what this chakra exercise was for, Naruto persevered, intent on finding it out on his own. He had nothing but time to kill anyway as they journeyed to their destinations on foot. But couldn't understand why his sensei wasn't letting him use clones to speed up the process. Jiraiya didn't respond and kept walking. Naruto would have liked nothing better than to pelt Jiraiya with the water balloon. Still, he had been given the impression this exercise was too important for him to waste the balloons on such childish escapades. So the young Jinchuriki continued to channel chakra through the balloon and tried to manipulate the water inside the balloon to explode. But Naruto couldn't help but wonder where he had heard about this exercise. "Try spinning," Jiraiya suggested after a while. "Spinning?" Naruto repeated. "All right." Naruto conceded after another moment of silence. He closed his eyes and drew a deep breath as he exercised as much possible control over his chakra as he channeled it into the balloon. Spin, spin. Spin, damn it. Naruto almost jumped as he felt the water spin in the water balloon rapidly. "I did it, I'm doing it." Naruto hadn't expected to be this excited over achieving some progression, but he was. Now to up the chakra output. With a snapping sound, the water balloon burst, and Naruto's right hand felt wet. Hell yeah, it worked. He punched the air, and Jiraiya shot him an approving smile over his shoulder. "So what now, Togeji?" "Just keep practicing." Jiraiya threw another water balloon over his shoulder. Tomorrow. The midday sun shined down on the world from a clear, nearly cloudless sky. It was another one of the beautiful days the Land of Fire was known for. The songs of birds and the cries of cicadas could be heard flowing along with the slight breeze that flowed through the area as the forest critters went about facing another day of life. As the sun rays bathed the land in its light and warmth and the sounds of nature echoed through the ground, two figures walked down a dirt path between a deep forest and a gushing river. The first was a fairly tall man, standing just over 6 feet tall. He had spiky white hair tied in a ponytail that trailed down to his waist and framed his face in a pair of bangs. He wore an unusual, horned forehead protector that bore the kanji for oil instead of the sign of his village. He wore a green kimono shirt with matching pants held by a black belt over mesh armor and white hair with 2 yellow circles on its sides and wooden geta sandals. He had 2 red lines trailing down from his eyes and had the summon scroll of the toads strapped to his back. He was none other than Jiraiya of the Sunin, one of the world's most famous, and infamous with the ladies, shinobi. The other was a young boy, moving to the side of the road to get a better view of the walled town in the distance, close enough that it could be seen but too far to make out any of its features. He had spiky red hair and ocean blue eyes. This was Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, Kurama. How long before we reach Taki? Naruto asked, looking up at his sensei. What kind of place is Taki? Even though the whole purpose of this trip was his training, they'd done nothing for the past 4 days. They'd visited 2 villages and 1 city in the Land of Fire, and so far, the Sunin had left him to practice his elemental manipulation while he went off doing God knows what. Sometimes, he said he'd needed to meet a contact, but other times the redhead thought the Sunin was just doing nasty stuff. It's over here, Jiraiya said, pointing his thumb to the trees as the blonde turned around to look at him. If I remember right, there should be a lake just past here. Seems like as good a place as any to start. With that, the Sunin turned away from the path, brushing aside some of the foliage in his way as he stepped beyond the tree line and said over his shoulder, "Come on, kid, this way." But he needn't have bothered, the redhead was already in pursuit of his sensei. It wasn't long before the two found themselves in a large clearing surrounding a lake, just as the toad summoner predicted. The sun reflected off the crystal clear waters as the large man took stock of the location and nodded to himself. Naruto took off his backpack, laying it against the trunk of a nearby tree before joining his sensei. "So, what are we doing here?" he asked, but thinking about the exercise that Toadjiji had given him. He found it strange to be a normal chakra control exercise and did not mention that exercise wasn't in the book about chakra control, and Naruto's chakra control was already good. Jiraiya looked around and made sure that no one was around before turning to Naruto. He smirked and cracked his knuckles. "You ready?" Jiraiya suddenly asked before Naruto could ask, "Ready about what?" Jiraiya moved in front of him and slammed a seal on his forehead. Backing away immediately. Naruto felt Kurama's chakra flowing through him, but this time felt different. He felt more relaxed. His body didn't feel like something was tearing his way into him. Naruto's whiskers grew, looking more intimidating. His nails grew as large as that of a fox. His teeth slowly grew and sharp enough to tear flesh. His eyes turned red. A red chakra cloak slowly covered Naruto around like a blanket. The part around his head grew 2 large ears. A tail slowly grew behind him. Naruto slowly stood on his 4. The amount of chakra with one tail felt less overwhelming. Before, it felt like trying to fill a vodka glass using a swimming pool full of water. "Naruto," Kurama suddenly said, concerned that he might lose control again. Naruto kept his gaze at Toadjiji. Jiraiya kept vigilant in case Naruto suddenly attacked. But he wasn't moving, breathing heavily. He took a deep breath and felt relaxed again. A smile slowly spread on his face, and his red eyes turned to look at Toadjiji, who smiled back. "Well done, kid," Kurama complimented him. Naruto kept the chakra cloak around. He wanted to get used to it. Kurama warned him to not try to use more than 1 tail worth of chakra. "Thanks, Kurama," Naruto said on his head, and Kurama's chakra slowly vanished, turning Naruto to normal. "Well done, my boy, let's rest here for some time," Jiraiya suggested, and Naruto nodded in agreement since he suddenly felt exhausted and wanted to sleep. Hidden hideout. A man using a cane slowly walked through a long corridor. The silence was overwhelming around him but not his mind. He had many thoughts and questions that had no answers. Right now, he was getting closer than ever to having Izanagi on his own hands. He had 3 now, but once the plan was done, he will have 10 Izanagi to secure his safety and immortality in a way. Danzo wasn't a fool. He knew Izanagi wouldn't make him younger, or anything like that's why he was after the daughter and the woman many years ago. Uzumaki clan was known for their lifespan. He needed them to experiment and perhaps find a way to use their cells to enhance his body. Live longer and make sure to lead Hidden Leaf to where it belongs, complete power over the elemental nations. His thoughts were on the Jinhiriki of Kyuubi. He had left the village for 3 years now, and Hiruzen wasn't talking. Just the thought of his old teammate telling him that he's the Hokage and he can't demand things made him clench his hand around the cane. But what surprised him even more was him being able to use wood style. The shinobi was about to use his kunao to slice the demon's throat. I was about to stop him when trees suddenly grew and killed the whole mob. Danzo grunted that the shinobi had tried to ignore his orders to leave the weapon alive, but having wood style. With him in my hands, training him correctly, he can easily take all the Baijuyu around the world and bring them back to Konoha as it should have been if Hashirama-sama had kept the Baijuyu. The other 4 hidden villages would bend the knee to their betters. Danzo thought stopped when a big door opened in front of him. Walking outside, in the grass, stood Itachi Uchiha. The boy had done his job well. The Uchiha clan needed to go. Hokage might have told you to wait, but we have no time if the Uchiha clans start their rebellion. Will leave us weak and vulnerable. What will stop the likes of Kumo or Iwa to conquer Konoha? Danzo stated with an emotionless tone. The dark eyes of Itachi showed no emotions, but inside he was questioning everything. Kill your clan and your brother gets to live, or you can join them. Danzo offered the choice to him. Itachi closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He opened his eyes to look at Danzo. I will do it, he stated with a fully matured Sharingan. Later, Itachi stood at the top of a pole, looking down as his little brother ran towards the clan. With a genjutsu, he made him take a long way around before disappearing into the darkness. Quickly moving through the shadows, Itachi walked inside the first house he came across without thinking, swung his swords and sliced them open. Blood flew like a waterfall. He didn't even see their faces. Not even their eyes, just the sound of blood. Itachi closed his heart to their suffering and swung again and again and again. Kill after kill. Slice after slice. House after house. Killing everyone, except the police of Uchiha clan. Someone else took care of that. As he moved silently through the shadows, his eyes went to a certain girl. Izumi, her beautiful eyes, were looking directly at him. But there was no fear in her eyes. A small smile spread on her face despite seeing the blood all around his body. Itachi closed his eyes and made his decision. With a powerful genjutsu, known as Tsukuyomi, he showed her how it could have been together. How it should have been, if only if the world wasn't so unforgiving. Itachi and Izumi stood together beneath a tree, Izumi resting her head on his chest and his fingers caressing her hair. One step. Itachi and Izumi stood together holding hands. They swore to love each other until death. One more step. Her name will be Akeuki, Izumi whispered in Itachi's ear as he kissed her belly growing. One tear. Holding hands, they stood together, looking at their children playing, 2 daughters and 1 boy. Akeuki, Surina, and Shisui. One swing of the sword. Chapter 21, Alone. Naruto woke up after sleeping for 7 hours now. It had been 3 days since he sparred with Togeji since he was able to use 1 tael worth of chakra. Kurama stated that now going to 2 taels worth of chakra will be easier than going from 0 to 1. Of course, Kurama had warned him the real challenge would be when he would want to reach 4 taels worth of chakra. Kurama didn't elaborate why holding 4 taels was harder. Naruto decided to ignore it for now since it was irrelevant for now. His sensei warned him that just because he could use Kurama's chakra, he should not be dependent on it, use it only as a last resort. Naruto, while I'm happy that you can use Kyuubi's chakra, you should use it only if you have no other choice, Jiraiya stated thoughtfully. Naruto was about to open his mouth when the old Sannin raised his hand. I'm sure you know about the Sharingan Naruto, it is a handy tool, but the Uchiha clan highly depends on it. They would be far stronger if everything they do weren't connected to their Sharingan in one way or another. The same is for you, get stronger on your own. I know you are already doing that, but don't change your mind, Jiraiya stated, and they returned to their walk towards Taki. Naruto was already using Kurama's chakra only if needed. Right now, he was trying to complete the second exercise that Togeji told him he should do. It was slowly driving him mad. The exercise was much more complicated than he had thought. But Naruto couldn't help but wonder what exactly was he doing. He knew this wasn't a chakra control exercise, so what jutsu was he trying to do? So, Naruto, tell me, how do you feel that you will soon return to the village? Jiraiya suddenly asked in front of him. He was walking 1 meter further from Naruto. He kept quiet, waiting for Naruto's response. The red hair frowned and lowered his head slightly. If he was honest, the only thing he was looking forward to was to meet his old friends, and that's about it. Naruto was sure that the village had not forgotten. For all they cared, they probably thought he was dead somewhere. And the moment he returned, it wouldn't take long for word to spread that the demon fox had returned ready to kill them all. Naruto snorted at the question and looked up again at his sensei. Not really looking forward to it. I don't think much has changed for 3 years, he replied honestly. Jiraiya didn't turn to him but just listened to his answer. Well, we still have 9 months left in our belt and don't forget you will go to the academy, he reminded him. Naruto raised an eyebrow, and he was slightly looking forward to the academy, wondering what they taught them there and how strong the students were there. I hope the academy is something, Naruto replied, and they kept making their way towards Taki. After 6 days. They had been walking for how many days now? Naruto didn't know, but Jiraiya-sensei told him they were getting closer. He had made improvements in his jutsu. His already good chakra control helped him to make improvements in the jutsu. They soon stopped walking, and Jiraiya-sensei walked away in the nearby town for research. Naruto didn't know what that was but decided to ignore it since it was probably something important that didn't involve him. Naruto stood in the middle of the grass, a tree close to him. Wind on his face, his red hair dancing with the wind. Naruto slowly raised his hand and fully opened it, and tried to concentrate. He didn't know what jutsu was but the chakra control needed to do it spoke a powerful one. Slowly his chakra gathered in the middle of his palm and gradually became a small blue sphere, and the chakra was moving violently everywhere around the sphere. Naruto gritted his teeth slightly since it wasn't easy. He felt a pain in his hand. Looking at the jutsu, Naruto understood what jutsu his sensei was teaching him. Raise non, Naruto whispered, shock written all over his face. A smile spread on his face, and he had learned a powerful jutsu from his father. He had intended to understand it, but he thought that he was ready for it. Naruto could feel the winds moving violently around, even making minor scratches in the skin of the tree nearby. He felt the pain growing in his right palm without thinking twice. He rushed at the tree and slammed his right hand on it. The raise non drilled the tree through, piercing it like a knife through butter. The sound of a tree falling was heard throughout the forest. Naruto was panting, and he slowly looked at his right hand to see it bleeding from various places. He even felt a sharp pain on his big finger. Gritting his teeth from the pain, he knew his finger was probably broken, but he didn't let himself scream. Naruto kept his mouth shut and screamed inside but not leaving a single complaint leaving his mouth. I did it, Tou-chan, Naruto said with a low tone, smiling looking upwards at what was left of the tree. Due to the damage, the upper part had fallen in the ground. Kurama was slowly healing his hand. Naruto slowly rested his head in the ground, his left hand behind his head to use as a pillow, his blue eyes smiling, looking up at the blue sky. Clouds were moving around. Now, he understood why Shikamaru found this relaxing. You did it, Naruto heard a voice and turned to look at his sensei smiling, who glanced at the tree. He smiled and walked close to his godson. Why didn't you tell me I was learning Raise Non? Naruto asked, looking at his right. Togeji chuckled and rubbed his red hair. I wanted you to be surprised, and congratulations for breaking my record. It took 3 years for your father to create it, 16 months for me to master it, Jiraiya stated, smiling proudly and turning to look at Naruto. You needed only 2 weeks of training, he finished, his face smiling and brightened up from the sun. He slowly sat beside him, he glanced at his right palm and turned to look at Naruto. Then suddenly, his face turned to serious again. Naruto, I know you hold no love for the Leaf Village. I can't blame you, all I'm asking for you is, whatever happens, don't change, don't seek vengeance. This world has enough of it, he said quietly and turned to look at the sun slowly hiding behind the mountains. The shinobi world is full of vengeance, hate, love, and greed. In this world, as long as there's a concept of more and less, there will always be those who want more. And the want for more will awaken the worst nature in humans. Greed, the old Sunin stated, his eyes looking at the mountains, his face showed pain. Whatever happens, Naruto, wherever life guides, you should know, no matter what. You will always be my godson, Jiraiya stated. Naruto looked at his Togeji with a smile, hot tears slowly rolling down his cheek and falling in the grass. He wiped his tears with his forearm and looked at his grandfather in all but name. "Thank you for being here for me, grandfather," Naruto stated softly, his head resting against the old Sannin's back. His white hair rested against Naruto's red ones. Jiraiya closed his eyes, a sad smile spread on his face. Being with Naruto made him think of Tsunade. Of their loss, sometimes he dreamed of how could have been if only. Sighing, he took a deep breath and enjoyed the moment with Naruto. Hidden place. Somewhere in a dark underground cave, two figures stood together, where the only sound that could be heard was the slow dripping of water falling from stalactites. After a few minutes, 6 more shadowy figures appeared, one after the other. The only discernible feature that linked the 8 figures together was the red clouds on their black cloaks, indicating that they were members of the Akatsuki. "The last time we all met like this, was 3 years ago when Orochimaru joined the organization," said one of the figures. "So, what's the occasion?" "We have a new member in the Akatsuki, Itachi Uchiha," the man spoke with a strong and deep tone. His purple eyes with 4 dark circles around him. With black orbs around his face. 3 on his nose and several in both of his ears. Orange hair and the emblem of the village hidden in the rain with a long cut through the forehead protector, indicating that he was a missing nin. Everyone turned to look at the new member. Itachi moved slowly, his fully matured Sharingan showed to everyone. One of the shadow figures licked his lips with a very long tongue looking at Itachi. His yellow eyes are like that of a predator. He was looking for worthy prey. Itachi looked at the eyes of the leader, and his Sharingan focused on his eyes. "Rinnegan," he whispered. He had heard of the eye, but to see someone wielding the legendary Dajatasu. He stooped in front of the leader and kneeled. Beside him was a woman with blue hair, a flower made of paper in her hair. Her face was emotionless. Itachi stood up, but he knew there was a third one in the cave watching them. A man with a mask. He was hiding his pain from the world. "Itachi Uchiha, our newest member of the Akatsuki. From now on, you will call me Leader Sama," he stated and handed him a ring. Itachi took it and put it in his ring finger. "The objective of the Akatsuki is to reach true peace. Our objective is to collect all the tailed beasts," the leader stated to him with a firm tone. Itachi nodded in understanding and closed his eyes for a second. "I hope you keep your promise." Hidden Sand Village. This happened today. The 4th Kazekage asked without looking up from the paperwork on his desk. "Yes. But actually, it's been happening more frequently than I've been letting you know." The Kazekage finally looked up at Yoshimaru, who was standing in front of his desk with his arms behind his back. "How frequently?" "Well, you know he's always had these little outbursts, but lately, they have become more severe. I think I started noticing an increase in his violent behavior after his 5th birthday. So this has been happening for over a year then." "Yes, Kazekage." For the first time in his life, Yoshimaru noticed an uneasiness in the Kazekage. He leaned on his desk with his elbow and rested his head in his hand. With his free hand, he rapidly tapped his fingers on the desk as if trying to beat down some kind of internal panic. The Kazekage took a deep breath and looked up at Yoshimaru once more. "But, he's always had these outbursts. What makes this one any different?" "Precisely what happened today. It was in the playground. He attacked 2 other children." The Kazekage stared past him and was silent. Yoshimaru felt that he should continue to explain. "As I said before, we both know he's always behaved this way. I'm not saying that this time is any different. I'm just saying it was a more severe attack. In fact, I'm certain he would have killed them if I hadn't intervened." The Kazekage reverted his eyes back to Yoshimaru and stared at him for a few moments as if studying him. Then he raised his brow, noticing his bandages for the first time. "Are those from him?" Yoshimaru nodded. The Kazekage closed his eyes as if to escape the world. Another moment of silence followed. Then, "I knew this day would come. I created this child, this monster, in the hope that he would be a successful weapon. Yes, the ultimate weapon. With him, our military would be unstoppable." These words made Yoshimaru sick. He cringed internally, remembering the Kazekage's dark secret that so few knew about. The secret that, unfortunately, Yoshimaru was cursed with knowing about. He knew about the Kazekage's overpowering hunger for power and military strength. He knew about the demon and the unwilling human sacrifice that was used to seal the demon inside the child. The child, the Kazekage's son. Gaara. The ultimate weapon. The ultimate weapon. The Kazekage continued, "But now, Now it seems he has become more of a threat to the village than something to aid it in becoming powerful. The Kazekage opened his eyes and shook his head. I knew this day would come. He repeated. I've known for quite some time. There have been rumors for years. Yoshimaru felt another wave of nausea. He knew what rumors the Kazekage was talking about. The rumors have been spreading ever since the Kazekage's wife was killed in a mysterious accident, right after the birth of his third child. The Kazekage's wife. Yoshimaru's sister, the unwilling human sacrifice. I can't let this go any farther. The Kazekage said. I can't let people keep talking about things that they don't understand. He shot a threatening glare at Yoshimaru as if accusing him of being involved in the rumors. But Yoshimaru was without fault. He had kept quiet about the ordeal for 6 years. Because honestly, he was afraid of his sick and twisted brother-in-law. This has to stop now. The Kazekage said. Today. He must be destroyed. Destroyed? Yoshimaru asked as if contemplating the meaning of the word. I want my son Gaara to be killed. Tonight. You will be perfect for this job, Yoshimaru. Tonight. That is an order. Killed? Tonight. Yes. You are going to follow your Kazekage's orders, aren't you? Yes, Kazekage, it's just. I don't know, he's so strong, the sand. I don't know if anyone can accomplish killing him. You fool. Let me remind you that Gaara is the very reason your sister is no longer with us. Yoshimaru looked at the floor. Yes, he knew this was true. Gaara was the cause of his sister's death. Not the Kazekage. The Kazekage was working toward making the village more powerful. He was trying to improve things. He wasn't really doing anything wrong. It was Gaara that was at fault. He was the cause of all this pain. Yoshimaru had lied to himself for years. He told himself that the Kazekage was a psychopathic monster when the real monster had always been Gaara. He had convinced himself that he loved Gaara. That he was all that was left of his sister. But now, he found that he was being truthful with himself. He hated Gaara. He always had. Everything wrong in his life could be traced back to Gaara. Gaara was the reason his sister was dead. Gaara was the reason he was no longer allowed to spend time with his other nephew Kankuro or his niece Tamari. It was because of Gaara. Gaara was too dangerous, and Yoshimaru had to devote all of his time to making sure that Gaara didn't kill anyone, throwing himself in front of Gaara's victims. He looked down at the bandages on his arms and reached up and touched the one on his head. He had been ordered to take care of Gaara from birth, 6 years of torture. But now, the Kazekage's orders were different. Now Yoshimaru could finally be free of this demon that was his nephew. So, have you changed your mind? The Kazekage asked, realizing that he had successfully convinced Yoshimaru. Yes. I'll try my best, but his strength. I still don't know. Night. Yoshimaru walked through the endless dark alleys and streets of Suna. The sun had set, and the usually scorching desert air was cool. It was quiet, and hardly anyone was out on the road tonight. Silence. Yoshimaru paused for a few seconds and stood motionless on the street, trying to remember exactly what he was doing and why he was doing it. He thought of the Kazekage, then thought of the Kazekage's wife, then of their 2 children Tamari and Kankuro. As he thought of his family, a smile crossed his masked face. He pictured all of them standing in front of him with smiles on their faces as well. Everything had once been so excellent. They had all been so happy. His thoughts reverted back to his sister again, and he remembered the day that started it all. Yoshimaru. The Kazekage has asked me to marry him. I'm so happy, Yoshimaru, she had yelled as she wrapped her arms around her brother. His mind began to fill with other happy memories. It's a girl, Yoshimaru, a daughter. Her name is Tamari. Isn't she beautiful? I'm a mommy. And you're an uncle, Yoshimaru. An uncle. I have to admit that I was hoping for a son, but something tells me that this little princess will be as tough as any son that I could have had. The Kazekage had said. Yoshimaru then thought of how happy the Kazekage was when he found out that their second child was a boy. Yoshimaru felt his smile fall into a frown as he thought of the third child. He pictured the red-headed demon that had ruined everything. Then his thoughts reverted back to his sister once more, and he confirmed with himself that what he was about to do was justified. Revenge. Gaara stood alone on a rooftop staring at the full moon, the wind flying over him when he heard a sound behind him before he had time to look who was behind. His sand moved behind his back, protecting him from 3 kunao. Gaara turned to look who attacked him, only to see a man wearing a dark hoodie. He saw the sand moving towards the man, and he wanted it to stop, not hurt anymore. He tried to yell, to scream, but all his words died on his throat when the man pulled out a short sword and jumped in the air to slash his head. Without thinking, without saying anything, his hands moved on their own, and the sand flew towards the man like ocean. He soon was covered everywhere in sand, stronger than steel. Gaara couldn't understand why no one loved him. Closing the fist, a cry was heard as Gaara felt rain on his face. Rain. His right hand slowly touched his cheek, but he saw blood instead. All around him, blood. Gaara looked at the man who attacked him, shaking. He grabbed his hood and removed it to see his uncle. His hands started shaking, and so did his voice. W. W.H. W.H. He stuttered, unable to talk. I'm sorry, Gaara, but your father ordered me to kill you, he said. Spitting out blood, his face pale, his blood all around his clothes. You cowl. Couldn't say n. No, Gaara said as more tears rolled down his cheek. I could. But I hated you, Gaara. You were the reason my sister. D. His voice stopped. Gaara screamed in grief, and everything went dark. Naruto. Takigakuer. Few foreigners would ever lay eyes upon this, one of a small handful of truly hidden villages among the elemental continents. A pity, because it was a wonderful place, made up of traditional, Eastern-style buildings, most of which were carefully and caringly constructed as if by a master carpenter, built around the walls of a little, circular valley full of plant life, around a massive, crystal-clear lake, at the heart of which lied an island where their administration building lied, resting at the base of the gargantuan, sacred tree of Taki, whose canopy covered the entire village. Beams of sunlight shined through its branches, illuminating the concealed village. The roof of the valley was hidden under a powerful genjutsu which was constantly monitored. It was an S-class secret of the village, and any outsider that stumbled upon it was quickly dealt with. Even the commonly used entrance as well, if a little obviously hidden, an underwater cave system behind a massive waterfall. It was thanks to the lengths they went to keep their home hidden that the village had only once been successfully invaded, and that mark on their village's pride had occurred solely due to the actions of a traitor. Naruto suddenly came out from a lake. He turned when he heard others emerge from the water's surface behind him. Out of the clear, blue water came a kunoichi of the village, wearing Taki's standard shinobi attire, followed by Jiraiya of the Sunin, blindfolded and by the look on his face, none too happy about having been dragged sightless through the hidden entrance of the village. Naruto held back a snicker as he used his chakra to rise out of and stand on the water, his sensei and their escort doing the same a moment later. Due to the crisis at the time, Shibuki had been forced to show him the entrance to the village, making blindfolding him a moot point. As he rose, Jiraiya took off the blindfold and turned his eyes to the tree. Taki was undoubtedly a nice place, though, in this Sunin's opinion, it was short on public bathhouses and hot springs, but, oh well. If you'll follow me, I'll escort you to see Lord Shibuki. The kunoichi said as she turned to the teacher and student duo. He's been expecting you, Master Jiraiya. I'm sure he'll be surprised to see who you've brought along. So, you never said? What is it you want to talk to Shibuki about anyway? Jiraiya shook his head. Sorry, kid, it's a secret. He said, smirking at his student's obvious annoyance. In short order, the trio had entered the administrative building and walked down its halls. The kunoichi opened the door for them and allowed them to enter. Shibuki sat behind a desk, filing away a completed form and reaching for the next one when he heard the door open. Thankful for a brief respite from the never-ending monotony of paperwork, he looked up and smiled amiably. Welcome, Master Jiraiya. It's been quite some time since you last visited us. So, what brings you here, Master Jiraiya? For business, he replied. And glanced down at Naruto, who rolled his eyes before leaving the office. Naruto walked across the bridge leading from the center island to the village proper, wondering what he would do with himself while his sensei was talking about whatever it was he was being so secretive about. It annoyed him to no end that the man kept this from him, but there was no point dwelling on it. Stepping off the bridge and walking the streets, the redhead looked around at the people that went about their daily business. As he looked around, Naruto noticed that he was receiving many looks. Because of how secretive and secluded the village was, outsiders stuck out like a sore thumb even though it was fairly large. He could see them staring at him and feel their gaze on his back, and every once in a while, whispers concerning him would reach his ears. It was something he was pretty used to. After all, he grew up receiving hateful glares and cruel whispers from the people of his own village as he grew up. Naruto kept walking when he heard a massive amount of chakra in a large forest close to the village. He didn't know where this chakra came from. Kurama inside could feel his sister close and was about to tell Naruto to go and check it out when Naruto had already started moving towards the forest. "Kurama, do you feel this?" Naruto asked him since he could feel this had a huge amount of chakra, almost like a Baijuya. "It seems you noticed it. It looks like my sister is close by," Kurama replied, smirking. Naruto smiled and moved even faster. Soon he reached the forest's center and was surprised to see an enormous tree he had ever seen. But his gaze turned to two girls fighting close to the lake. But Naruto froze when he felt the chakra of the redhead. "She's an Uzumaki." That all for What If Naruto found out about Uzumaki clan at an early age. Part 10. If you like this story, please show your support by liking the video and subscribing to my channel, and also show your support to the author by hitting the link down in the description. Thanks for listening, and until next time.